Janet sat alone in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of a past that haunted her. The walls echoed with memories of a time when she, too, believed in the unconditional love of family. As the evening sun cast a warm glow on faded posters and forgotten trophies, Jeanette couldn't shake the feeling that she had always been unwanted. "I just don't understand why you can't be more like Joanna," her mother's voice echoed in her head. The words became a mantra, a reminder of her seeming inadequacy. Jeanette traced the outline of a child's drawing she had once proudly presented to her parents, but was met with indifference. The room, frozen in time, held the weight of a... Janet's gaze wandered to the family photograph on the dresser, a perfect facade that hid the underlying tension within her. Joanna glowed with that effortless charm that always eluded Jeanette. 7 knocks on the door interrupted Jeanette's melancholy reverie. "Jeanette, dinner is ready." Father called. His voice lacked warmth. Father must carry on with a heavy sigh. Jeanette descended the stairs, the creaky steps a haunting reminder of the emotional distance between her and her family. "I made your favorite, Joanna," her mother announced, placing a plate of spaghetti in front of Jeanette, whose name had become synonymous with disappointment. "Thank you, Mom." Jeanette muttered, sliding the pasta across the plate, her appetite marred by the eternal pain of unworthiness at the dinner table. Joanna indulged her parents with stories of her days that portrayed her as the golden child, the one who effortlessly charmed the world. Jeanette sat in silence, observing her own life. The evening was drawing to a close, and Jeanette found solace in her sanctuary, a dimly lit room filled with books and the promise of escape. Along with her thoughts, she whispered to herself, "Why can't they see me as I am?" This unanswered question weighed heavily on young shoulders already bent under the weight of unfulfilled expectations. In the days that followed, Jeanette's quest for approval became a relentless chase, a marathon without a finish line. The air at home crackled with tension, and each interaction left with an unspoken desire to recognize the end. One evening, as Jeanette tucked herself into her textbook, his father's voice cut through the thick silence. "Joanna, did you see this straight like once again?" he exclaimed, proudly displaying Joanna's report card. "I told you she was destined to be great." She glanced at Jeanette, who sat unnoticed in the corner. The dinner conversation became a battlefield of unspoken rivalry. Jeanette's attempts to share her accomplishments were met with careless disinterest. "It's a pleasure, honored one," her mother said, returning to the latest news about Joanne's social life. Without pausing, Jeanette plunged headlong into her studies, hoping that her academic success would help bridge the emotional chasm widening in her family. Late nights turned into early mornings as she tucked herself into her law books, desperate for an approving nod. One day, Jeanette plucked up her courage and approached her parents with her latest accomplishment. "Look, I made it to the honor board," she announced, holding out the certificate like an offering. In response, her father waved his hand dismissively. "It's not just about being at the top, yes. Even if you scored 95 in science, it's not perfect." Mother's voice was sharp as ice and added, "Your lack of effort is why you end up getting those results. It's really unpleasant." The weight of their expectations fell on Jeanette's shoulders. "I'm sorry, please," she murmured quietly. Apology, a vain attempt to fill the void left by their coldness as Jeanette retreated to her room. Joanna's voice followed, a mocking reminder that she felt inferior. "Oh, sister, you don't get lectured anymore, do you?" Joanna walked in uninvited, smirking at Jeanette's report card, with good grades and still swearing. "It's sad. I'm being praised for barely passing. Did you come here just to say that?" Jeanette objected. Frustration bubbled beneath the surface. I was worried. Maybe you were depressed again, but I didn't expect such a cold reception. Joanna feigned concern. There was a poorly concealed contempt in her words. That's your problem. Always so nonchalant. That's why Papa and Mama don't show you any love. When Joanna left, the echo of her merry laughter with her parents echoed from the living room, leaving Jeanette alone with the bitter taste of isolation. The tears, though familiar, seemed a betrayal of her own resolve. Tears flowed in rivers that night, silent witnesses to the rejection Jeanette felt deep within her loneliness in her room. She clutched the report card, which was now crumpled beyond recognition, in her clenched hand. I don't need their expectations. I am not influenced by Joanna's words. Jeanette whispered a mantra to herself that she clung to desperately. The wall seemed to close in as the weight of her family's scorn pressed down on her. Jeanette worked tirelessly, hoping for words of praise, a glimmer of recognition. Instead, all she received were rebukes for grades that never met the elusive standards set by her parents. It's not just about being on top. You need to get near perfect grades in every subject. Your lack of effort is why you end up getting these results. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind with a harshness that cut through the air. Excuse me, please. Jeanette murmured quietly. The words were a feeble attempt to soothe the unhappy Isabel. No matter how much time and effort she put in, her results never earned the desired approval. As Jeanette wiped away her tears, Joanna's voice echoed in her mind. That's your problem. Always so nonchalant. That's why Papa and Mama don't show you any love. The realization was a cruel blow. Joanna, the favorite, monopolizes her parents' affection, leaving Jeanette in the shadow of neglect. It wasn't just the grades. It was a deep sense of rejection and the realization that her efforts would forever fail. The crumpled report card, a tangible manifestation of her struggle. Jeanette repeatedly told herself that she didn't need her family's approval, that she would find her worth. But the 8 persisted. I will not let rejection define me, she declared through clenched teeth, though silent tears betrayed the resilience she clung to so desperately. The night continued, the darkness outside reflecting the turmoil within. Janet's resolve strengthened as she promised herself to get back on her feet, to break free from the suffocating environment that threatened to consume her. Nevertheless, the sadness remained, and tears, like uninvited guests, continued to flow down her cheeks. Janet plunged into her studies with renewed zeal, determined to break free from the shadow of rejection that loomed over her. The light of her study lamp became a beacon in the late hours of the night as she delved into the intricacies of the law. Seeking solace in the academic world, first place in class became her refuge, a place where she could momentarily forget the echoes of her parents' disapproval. Every award, every high grade served as a shield from the harsh realities of her family. One day, as Jeanette pored over law textbooks, the door creaked open and her father's voice invaded the cocoon of concentration she had built. Jeanette, what are you doing? You've been at it for... I'm studying, Papa, she replied, trying to hide the irritation that simmered beneath the surface. Studying? Yes. What's that really for? You're not Joanna. You don't need to overstretch yourself, he said, peering at her books with a mixture of concern and confusion. That's what I need to do. There was determination in Janet's voice, defying the expectations that had held her back for so long. Weeks had turned into months, and Jeanette's dedication brought visible results. She maintained first place in her class, outperforming her peers in every test, yet the praise she deserved remained elusive. You have to do more than just be top of your class, Jeanette. Her mother's voice echoed in her ears, a constant reminder that nothing she did was ever enough. Late one night, while Jeanette was immersed in legal theories, Joanna entered the room uninvited. "Still on the case, huh? Do you really think that if you bury yourself in these books, they'll love you?" Joanna's words pierced the air like a cold wind. "I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for me," Janet replied. Her gaze stopped on the pages in front of her. Jonah grinned. "Well, good luck with that. Maybe if you were a little prettier, Daddy and Mommy would show you some love." The door closed behind Joanna, leaving Jeanette struggling with the conflicting emotions that raged in the victim of social life, and the relentless pursuit of academic excellence became her survival mechanism, her way of navigating a world that seemed to envy her every success. As the years passed, Jeanette's accomplishments began to pile up, yet the void left by her family's love remained unfilled. Academic escape, though it provided moments of respite, could not heal the emotional cracks that were deep within her. Janet's 18th birthday became a beacon of independence, and with it came a decision that changed the course of her life. In a dimly lit room, surrounded by textbooks and the weight of unfulfilled expectations, Janet wrote the letter and left it on the kitchen table. The morning light filtered through the curtains as Janet stood on the threshold of a new beginning. With a heavy heart, she had left the only home she had ever known, leaving behind a letter that was meant to serve as her farewell. Her father discovered the letter during breakfast. Confusion reflected on his face as he read Janet's words. "I need to find my own way. Thank you for everything. But I must go." The note was written in ink, a silent testament to years of unspoken pain. "Why would she do that?" exclaimed her mother, clutching the letter in her hand, as if the paper contained answers to questions that had long remained unanswered. Joanna, with a careless shrug, remarked, "Maybe she finally realized she couldn't compete with me. I mean, who would want to live in my shadow forever?" Janet's departure has caused a ripple in the family. Each member struggles with the void left behind. The burden of her absence, though palpable, has lifted a burden off Janet's shoulders, giving her a taste of freedom. She had long hair, and 4 days turned into weeks, and Janet traveled the world on her own terms. Working in the factory became a means to an end, a way to support herself as she continued her education on her own. The modest wage she received was a small price to pay for the world she found beyond her family's expectations. Nevertheless, the journey was far from easy. Jeanette's resolve wavered in the face of financial hardship, but the thought of returning to the stifling environment she had left behind fueled her resilience. On her 18th birthday, Janet left not only her physical space, but also the emotional chains that had bound her for so long. The lights of the city greeted her as she left, and each step reflected her newfound freedom. The nights were filled with the tapping of a pen, scratching on paper, the pursuit of knowledge becoming a refuge in a world that gradually opened its arms to her. Jeanette's journey to liberation from the stifling constraints of the past was just beginning, and with each passing day, the path on her shoulders grew lighter and lighter. The bustling cityscape was the backdrop for Jeanette's relentless pursuit of success. Her evenings were consumed by the glow of city lights and the hum of night classes. The factory job that had once been a means of survival now fueled her dreams of something more. Law school became her sanctuary, a realm where merit spoke louder than pedigree. Janet, once an underappreciated daughter, became a force to be reckoned with in the academic arena. Her triumphs in the courtroom, however, became exclamation points in a history of resilience. One day, after an intense courtroom battle, Janet's colleagues gathered around her with a mixture of honor and admiration in their eyes. "You hit the mark, Janet." The argument was brilliant, her friend and fellow law school student exclaimed. "A victory, sweet and long overdue, has resonated beyond the walls of the court." Janet Sachs became a beacon of hope for those facing adversity, a testament to the power of determination. As she maneuvered through the maze of legal theories, Janet's reputation spread at the speed of wildfire. A top-notch law firm that once seemed an attainable dream now invited her in. Janet, with a sense of quiet triumph, accepted the offer, leaving behind echoes of a family that failed to recognize her potential. Office corridors replaced the hallowed corridors of the law school, and Jeanette found herself surrounded by lawyers who recognized her talents. Colleagues approached her, offering words of praise and encouragement. One day, as Jeanette was preparing for an important case, her mentor, an experienced lawyer with a gruff exterior, stopped by her desk. "You have stamina, Janet. I've seen a lot of lawyers in my time. Except you. You're something else," he observed, and there was a rare light of approval in his eyes. The courtroom became both a battleground and a stage for Jeanette's transformation. Each victory, no matter how small, eased the insecurities that had defined her past. The power of her voice, once drowned out by her family's criticism, echoed through the hollowed corridors of justice. Late one night, as Jeanette finished her work, a message notification popped up on her. It was her sister Joanne, who'd heard about Jeanette's success. "Impressive, Jeanette. I had no idea. You're making something of yourself." There was a subtle acknowledgement in the message that hinted at lingering shadows of rivalry. With a wry smile, Janet replied, "It's never too late to fulfill your potential." The message, though simple, marked a shift in the dynamic that defined their relationship. Janet, triumphant in the courtroom, found a voice that could no longer be ignored. Years passed, in a rhythm of courtroom victories and professional accolades, and Jeanette's life unfolded on her terms. Nevertheless, echoes of the past continued to resound, and an unexpected invitation stirred the dormant embers of the family bond. The envelope, elegantly decorated with the words, "Joanna's wedding," arrived like a messenger from a distant land. Janet hesitated, lingering her fingers on the seal that promised reunion. This invitation caused conflict within her. The desire for closure clashed with the fear of returning to the past she had tried so hard to overcome. The city lights dimmed as Janet pondered, her thoughts becoming a whirlwind of uncertainty. Finally, with a sigh, she decided to attend the wedding. The confluence of past and present promised a reckoning she could no longer evade. As Jeanette entered the hall, the air thickened with a mixture of anticipation and awe. Her parents were sitting in the family section of the reserve, and there was a mixture of surprise and discomfort on their faces when they noticed her. Jeanette overcame the awkwardness and took her seat among the sea of unfamiliar faces. "You've got some chutzpah here. You must be doing well with your parishioners. Earnings from the factory." Father's cold remarks cut through the polite facade. "Indeed, you're right. Introducing someone like her as family does us no honor as parents." Her mother added the contempt evident in every word. Janet, keeping her composure, replied, "I'm here as a member of the family like everyone else." The tension in the air was building, and Joanna, dressed in a carefully chosen blue dress, approached her older sister. "Because I feel sorry for you. I've come up with a great idea," Joanna whispered. A hidden agenda sparkled in her eyes. "Excuse me, what a great idea," Janet objected. Suspicion froze on her face. Joanna continued with a smug smile. "Even though she earns little and leads a modest life, is there anyone here who can write about my sister's future? The gaze of the assembled guest shifted to Jeanette, and confusion swept through the room. Jeanette asked, remaining calm. "What are you trying to get out, Joanna?" There was silence in the room, and Joanna, enjoying the attention, stated, "I think my sister deserves someone better. Someone has succeeded, maybe a handsome doctor." The atmosphere grew heated, and Jeanette's eyes narrowed. "You're playing games, Joanna. How will you end the game?" But before Joanna could answer, the groom arrived, a doctor who seemed unaware of the unfolding spectacle. The guests exchanged glances, and Jeanette felt a sense of déjà vu as she recognized the groom from her legal circles. The groom, puzzled, asked, "Wait, why are you leaving your seat?" The hospital director, a guest at the wedding, intervened by talking about Jeanette's professional accomplishments. "Don't you know what kind of person your sister is?" He questioned the groom. "A promiscuous one. I just met her sister for the first time today, and all I heard was that she worked in a factory after graduating from high school." The hospital director became enraged, turned to Joanna. "The behavior is at rock bottom. You have truly overlooked what is valuable." As chaos erupted, Jeanette, with a calm demeanor, said to Joanna, "You will soon realize how terrible your actions were." The groom, appalled by Joanna's behavior, announced the dissolution of the marriage. Jeanette, satisfied with this turn of events, left the room with her head held high, cutting off all contact with the family that had once rejected her. This invitation not only revealed the full extent of Joanna's deception, but also marked the final end of the long-standing ties that bound Jeanette to a painful past. The repercussions of the canceled wedding hung in the air, and Jeanette found herself at the center of an unexpected storm. The once bustling venue was now buzzing with awkward silence and exchanged glances, each of the guests struggling with the shocking revelation of Joanna's deception. Had Jeanette managed to make her way through the dispersing crowd, she felt a mixture of vindication and sympathy. The lights of the city outside contrasted sharply with the dimly lit atmosphere of the wedding hall. Janet's phone buzzed with a message from Joanna, a last-ditch attempt to salvage dignity. "Jeanette, hold on. We need to talk," Joanna pleaded. Her voice sounded like a strange whisper. The expression on her face was unreadable. "Talk about what, Joanna? Your grand plan to humiliate me in front of everyone. I didn't think it would go this far. I was just trying to what? Embarrassing me, turn my life into a play." Jeanette's words interrupted Joanna's attempts to explain herself. "I didn't know you were a success. You never told us anything. Why keep it a secret?" Joanna's desperation was palpable. "Why should I tell someone who has never contacted me about my profession?" Jeanette objected, a mixture of frustration and disappointment in her voice. The gravity of the situation pressed on Joanna as she looked back at the disapproving faces. This wasn't supposed to happen. "I thought he would just quietly leave." Jeanette, with a wry smile, replied, "Well, your plan backfired on me. Maybe next time. Think before you try to manipulate the people around you." The guests who had overheard the scraps of conversation exchanged understanding glances. Jeanette, not wanting to continue the confrontation, Joanna, a mixture of remorse and humiliation on her face, mutter, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "I'm sorry, Jeanette." But Jeanette was determined to break free of the toxic bonds and keep walking, leaving Joanna to deal with the consequences of her ill-conceived plan. The city lights outside the window flickered, reminding them of the world beyond the tangled web of family drama. As Jeanette disappeared into the night, the remnants of Joanna's humiliation lingered in the wedding hall, a stark contrast to the celebration that was to come. This invitation not only exposed Joanna's deception, but also gave Jeanette the opportunity to move forward on her own terms. After the wedding was canceled, the aftermath echoed through the lives of those involved. Among the stunned guests was the groom, a doctor caught in the crossfire of family drama. He never expected it. As the hall emptied, the doctor approached Jeanette. A look of confusion was reflected on his face. I need to understand what just happened. Why was the wedding canceled? Jeanette, accustomed to the collateral damage of family conflicts, I can only guess. It seems that my sister had her own plans and I became an unwitting pawn in her game. The doctor asked in confusion. But what was her motive? And who are you in all this? My name is Jeanette, her estranged sister. As for her motive, I can only guess. Maybe, she thought, embarrassing me in front of everyone would be fun. Jeanette replied. There was bitterness in her words, with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity in his eyes. He remarked, I had no idea she had a sister, let alone one with such a successful career. She never mentioned you? Well, we're not exactly close. Jeanette sneered, a hint of irony in her tone as they made their way through the remains of the wedding hall. The doctor asks, why is she doing all this? Is there some deep-seated rivalry between you two? Jeanette looked back at the actors they left behind and admitted that rivalry might be an understatement. She's always been the favorite, and I've been the perpetual disappointment. But this was a new low. The doctor, sensing the gravity of Janet's words, smiled genuinely. Well, whatever her motives, it's clear that you're the one who came out the winner. You handled it with grace. I appreciate that. It's been a long road. Jeanette admitted that there was a mixture of relief and fatigue in her voice as they approached the exit. The doctor held out his hand. I'm Dr. James Matthews. If you ever need someone to talk to or just a friendly face in the hospital, you know where to find me. Jeanette, surprised by the sincere offer, thank you, Dr. Matthews. Perhaps someday I'll take you up on your offer. When their paths parted, Jeanette felt shut out, not only because of the wedding fiasco, but also because of years of marital turmoil. The doctor's discovery of her successful career, instead of being a source of embarrassment, it became an unexpected ally in her journey to escape the shadows of unworthiness. The aftermath of her canceled wedding put Jeanette at a crossroads, her past unexpectedly colliding with her present. As the lights of the city illuminated her path, she felt a mixture of relief and release. It was time to break the last ties that bound her to a family that had never truly understood her worth. A few days after the wedding fiasco, Jeanette received a barrage of messages and calls from her family. The voicemails were overflowing with apologies and attempts to justify Joanne's actions. Jeanette, however, had made up her mind. The ties that had once bound her had become threads too frayed to be repaired. In the quiet solitude of her apartment, Jeanette pondered the messages, but decided not to respond. Her phone buzzed with another incoming call, and this time she answered. It was her father. Jeanette, this has gone too far, he pleaded with a calm look. Jeanette replied, Dad, it's been a long time. I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need to live by my own rules. The conversation lapsed into heavy silence, and after a moment the unspoken tension overcame the physical distance between them. I appreciate the apology, but I need space. I need to find my own peace. Her father, defeated, muttered, You've always had a way with words. I wish you would use them to bring us closer together, not apart. Jeanette felt a sense of closure. The decision to cut ties hadn't come easily to her, but it was a necessary step toward getting her life back together. Weeks turned into months, and Jeanette focused on building a future devoid of family expectations. The city lights outside her window provided a comforting backdrop to her newfound independence. Her career flourished, and each success became a reminder of the strength she had discovered within herself. One evening, as she was finishing a particularly difficult case, Jeanette's phone rang with a message. It was Dr. James Matthews, the girl from the canceled wedding. "Hi, Jeanette. I hope you're doing well after all that drama. If you ever need a break from the legal battles, let me know. I owe you a coffee." A smile played on Jeanette's lips at the message. The unexpected support from someone outside the tangled web of family ties felt like a breath of fresh air. "Coffee sounds good," she replied. "I could use a break." When Jeanette went into town to meet with Dr. Matthews, she felt a peacefulness she hadn't known in years. The lights of the city that had once been the backdrop to her struggles were now leading her toward a future she had created herself. At the cafe, they share stories and laugh. Jeanette realized that family is defined by more than blood. The ties she had broken paved the way for bonds based on understanding and mutual respect. As night enveloped the town in its embrace, Jeanette, once an unworthy daughter, found solace in the embrace of newfound friendship and the promise of a life lived on her own terms. At the cafe, they share stories and laughs. Jeanette realized that family is defined by more than blood. The ties she had broken paved the way for ties based on understanding and mutual respect. As night enveloped the town in its embrace, Jeanette, once an unworthy daughter, found solace in the embrace of newfound friendship and the promise of a life lived on her own terms. If you like the stories on our channel, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and put a bell to be the first listeners of another new story. Good luck and come back. It will be interesting.